Savannah, Georgia is one of the most beautiful cities in America. Spanish moss hanging from oak trees, cobblestone squares, old houses with wide porches and tall windows. The kind of city that looks like it was built slowly and carefully by people who believe that beautiful things were worth the time. Diana Reeves grew up on the east side of Savannah. Not the tourist part, not the part on the postcards. The real part, the part where people went to work every morning and came home every evening and knew their neighbors by name because they had lived beside them for 20 years. Her father worked at the port. Her mother ran a small alteration shop out of their house for 31 years. They were not wealthy, but they were the kind of steady that money cannot buy and that children who grow up inside it carry with them for the rest of their lives. Diana was the younger of 2 children. Her brother Owen was 5 years older. Owen was the one who walked her to the bus stop every morning until she was 12 and told her it was because he was going that way anyway. He was not going that way. She figured that out when she was 15 and never said anything about it. That was the kind of brother he was. Diana studied contract law and business administration at Savannah State. She graduated near the top of her class, got a job at a mid-sized real estate development firm called Whitfield Group, where her title was Contract Compliance Manager. Her job was simple to explain and hard to do. She read every contract that passed through the firm, every clause, every condition, every word that could be interpreted 2 ways. She found it and she fixed it before it became a problem. She was very good at finding things before they became problems. Except once. That was Marcus. She met Marcus Cole at a real estate conference in downtown Savannah. He was 35. He worked in commercial property development. He was confident the way some men are confident, not loud about it, just certain, like he had already decided how most situations would go and he was rarely surprised. He found her at the coffee station between sessions. "You asked the only question today that the speaker actually had to think about," he said. She looked at him. He should have thought about it before he presented. Marcus smiled. "Most people would have just let it go. Most people aren't reading the same contracts I am," she said. He laughed. And the laugh was real, unperformed, the laugh of someone who had not expected to be genuinely entertained and was. They talked through the afternoon break. He called the next day, and the one after that. He was interesting. He listened when she spoke. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered things she had said 3 conversations ago. She thought, this is someone who pays actual attention. She was right about that. For a while. They married 2 years later. A small ceremony at Forsyth Park under the oak trees. Her parents were there. Owen stood beside her and shook Marcus's hand and smiled, but his eyes were doing something different from his mouth. His eyes were taking their time. "Take care of her," Owen said. "That's a plan," Marcus said. Owen nodded once, slowly, and did not look entirely convinced. Diana remembered that nod later, much later, when she finally understood what Owen had seen that she had missed. The first year was good. The second year was mostly good. The third year was when Diana started paying a different kind of attention. Not because anything dramatic happened, because small things change. And Diana had spent enough years reading contracts to know the small things are always where the real problem hides. Marcus stopped asking about her work. He started finishing his sentences at dinner parties, not correctly, just confidently, as if her actual answer was less important than the fact that he had one ready. He started going to events alone. Work dinners, industry gatherings, a weekend trip to Atlanta he mentioned while he was already packing. Diana was not invited. She did not ask to be. She had learned by then that asking created tension, and tension in their house had started to feel dangerous in a way she could not yet name. He started taking calls in the backyard, coming back inside with a look on his face that told her nothing and everything at the same time. She bought a small black notebook. She kept it in her work bag. Every evening she wrote down what she had noticed, not how she felt about it, what she had actually observed. Times, words, patterns. It was the same thing she did with contracts at work. Read carefully, write it down, find what doesn't fit. She was already finding things. She just did not have enough of the picture yet. It took Diana 4 evenings to build a complete picture. She sat at the kitchen table each night after Marcus went to sleep, and went through 20 months of financial records the same way she went through contract documents at work, methodically, without skipping anything, without deciding something was unimportant before she understood what it was. What she found was not complicated. It was just hidden, the way things are hidden by people who believe the other person is not looking. Regular transfers to an account she did not recognize. That account tied to a lease in Midtown Savannah, the most expensive part of the city. Car payments on a vehicle she had never seen. Restaurant charges and hotel stays on a card that had never appeared on any statement she had access to. She matched every transaction against her notebook. Every transfer, every date, every amount. All of it lined up exactly with the evenings Marcus had been unavailable. The trips he had taken alone. The dinners she had not been invited to. She built a spreadsheet. She named it Property Review Q3, so it looked like work if anyone glanced at her screen. It was not a property review. It was a case file. By the end of the fourth evening, she had documented 20 months of financial movement. $91,000. Move carefully, in amounts small enough not to trigger automatic flags, over a period long enough to look like normal variation. She saved a file in 3 places. A personal email account Marcus had never seen, a USB drive she mailed to herself at her office, and a printed copy she drove to Patricia's house on a Saturday morning and left in Patricia's hands. "Keep this somewhere he cannot reach," Diana said. Patricia looked at the envelope, then at Diana. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Diana thought about the honest answer. "Almost," she said. Patricia nodded. "Almost is enough for now. Keep going." It was a Tuesday night in November. Marcus was out. He had said late meeting and left at 6:30 without looking at her. Diana sat at a kitchen table in the Savannah house and listened to the quiet and felt fully, finally, without any part of herself arguing against it, that she could not do this alone anymore. She picked up a phone. She called Owen. He answered before the second ring finished. D.I. Her name. Just that. Like he had been sitting next to his phone. She talked for 51 minutes. She told him everything. From the beginning. From the first dinner party where Marcus finished her sentences to the spreadsheet sitting in Patricia's filing cabinet with $91,000 documented across 20 months. Her voice stayed level throughout. She was not looking for sympathy. She was briefing him, the way she briefed partners at Whitfield on complex contract situations. When she finished, Owen was silent. She counted 8 seconds. "Is he there right now?" Owen said, "No. The dinner Friday. Will she be there?" "Yes," Diana said, "and his partner Tyler, and 2 others from his office." Another silence. Shorter. "I'll be there," he said. "Owen." "Diana, I will be there. You are done doing this alone." She pressed her hand flat on the kitchen table, looking for something solid. "Don't come at the beginning," she said. "Let it happen first." "I know how to wait," he said. "I've been waiting for you to call for 8 months." She closed her eyes briefly. "I'm sorry," she said. "You called," he said. "That's everything." She said goodnight. She hung up. She opened her notebook to a clean page and wrote 4 words. "Owen is coming. Friday." Then she closed it, turned off the light, went to bed. She slept better than she had in months. Owen Reeves was 41 years old. He had grown up in the same Savannah house as Diana. Same parents. Same porch. Same understanding from an early age that nothing was going to arrive at their door already built, and that was completely fine because they were going to build it themselves. He started his first company at 24, a small cybersecurity firm operating out of a shared office in Midtown Savannah. He did client calls, site visits, billing, and technical work, all of it himself for the first 18 months. By 28, he had 16 employees and contracts with 2 regional hospital systems and a mid-sized bank in Augusta. By 33, Reeves Digital Security was operating across the entire southeastern United States. Government contracts, federal agencies. 3 of the largest financial institutions in the country called him when their systems had problems they could not solve internally. He was not famous in the way that people who appear on magazine covers are famous. He was known in the way that matters more, by the people who run things, by the people who make the calls that don't get reported, by the people who, when a serious problem arrived, reached for their private contacts list and found Owen Reeves's number near the top. He had been offered acquisition deals 4 times by companies 3 times his size. He had turned down all 4. He did not build things to sell them. He built things because building them correctly mattered. Outside of work, Owen Reeves had one person in the world he loved without conditional limit or calculation of any kind. His sister. He had watched Diana's life change from a distance for 3 years. Watched her get quieter. Watched her become more careful. Watched the woman who used to call him twice a week disappear, slowly, steadily, behind the life that Marcus Cole had decided she deserved. He had not pushed. He knew Diana. He knew she would come to him when she was ready. Pushing before that moment would only make her feel worse about a situation that was already hard enough. But he had been ready. From the moment he first noticed a change in her voice, a year and a half ago, on a phone call that lasted 12 minutes when it used to last an hour, he had been paying attention. And when she called on that Tuesday night in November and talked for 51 minutes without stopping, he already knew most of what she was going to say. He had just been waiting for her to say it. There was one person at Marcus's firm who had been watching things unfold for a year and saying nothing. His name was Tyler Brooks. He was Marcus's business partner, 43 years old. He had built the firm alongside Marcus from the beginning. 8 years of shared work, shared risk, shared credit when things went right. Tyler was not a sentimental man, but he was an honest one. And for the past 12 months, he had been watching Marcus make decisions that did not make sense, financial decisions, partnership decisions, decisions about how company resources were being used, and filing what he observed in the back of his mind without yet knowing what to do with it. He had not gone to Diana. It was not his place. He had not confronted Marcus. He did not yet have proof, just patterns, and Tyler had been in business long enough to know that patterns without proof are just feelings, and feelings were not enough. But he had kept watching, and he had started keeping his own notes. He received an email on the Thursday before the dinner from an address he did not recognize. It contained 3 documents, a summary, 2 financial records. He read them twice. Then he picked up his phone and made a call he had been thinking about making for 6 months. He did not call Marcus. He called the firm's attorney. Diana cooked for 3 hours. Pot roast slow-cooked since noon. Roasted sweet potatoes. Green beans with almonds. Cornbread from scratch, her mother's recipe, the one she had written down on an index card when she was 17 and kept in her recipe box ever since. She set the table with the good dishes, the real silverware, cloth napkins she pressed that morning. She wore a simple dark green dress, hair down, small pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's. She had done everything right. Marcus came downstairs at 6:45 and walked through the dining room without saying anything about the table or the food or the effort. "The Harrisons are coming at 7, he said, "and Derek and Sandra from the office." "I know," Diana said. He looked at her for just a moment, the quick, flat look he had developed over the past 2 years, checking whether she was going to be difficult tonight, checking whether she knew anything she shouldn't. She gave him nothing. She smiled and went back to the kitchen. At 6:55, Vanessa arrived. She had not been included in the list Marcus gave Diana. She never was. She simply appeared, standing in the living room in a dark red dress, holding a bottle of wine she handed to Marcus without acknowledging that Diana was standing 4 feet away. "Something smells incredible," Vanessa said, to Marcus, as if Diana were furniture. "Diana cooked," Marcus said, flat, indifferent, like it was the least significant fact of the evening. "How domestic," Vanessa said, and smiled at Marcus. And Marcus smiled back. Diana carried the cornbread to the table and said nothing. The Harrisons arrived at 7. Ryan and Carol. Ryan worked 2 floors above Marcus in the same building. Carol was pleasant and careful the way people are when they want to seem warm without committing to anything real. Derek Simmons and his wife Sandra arrived 7 minutes later. Derek was Marcus's longest-standing client. He laughed too loud and talked too much and had spent 20 years mistaking volume for substance. Sandra Simmons sat down beside Diana and asked about her job and actually listened to the answer. That small thing, being listened to, hit Diana somewhere she had not expected. She kept her face steady. She answered Sandra's questions. She poured wine. She passed the bread. She was completely present and completely somewhere else at the same time. By 8:15, Marcus was on his 4th drink. His voice had gotten louder the way it did when he felt safe and powerful and had an audience he trusted to agree with him. Diana was clearing the salad plates. She did not see what triggered it. She never did. One moment she was at the side table. The next moment Marcus was behind her. "You didn't warm the plates," he said. "Quiet. Just for her." She toned. "The food is warm. The plates don't." "I told you to warm the plates," he said. His voice was getting the edge in it. The specific edge he had learned to recognize over 5 years. The leading edge of something coming. "I told you before people arrived." "Marcus, the food." 5 years. He said it loud now. Table loud. Every person in the room loud. 5 years, and you still cannot follow one simple instruction. Ryan Harrison looked at his plate. Carol went completely still. Derek Simmons put down his fork. Sandra looked at Diana with an expression that was not polite and not neutral. It was something more honest than either of those things. Nobody said stop. Marcus looked at Diana the way he had been looking at her for 2 years, like she was a recurring problem he was tired of managing, like she had stopped being a person somewhere along the way and become an inconvenience wearing a person's shape. He reached for his belt. From across the room, Vanessa raised her glass slightly. A small private gesture. Just for Marcus. Just between them. Diana turned back to the side table. She pressed her hand flat on the surface. She found a specific spot on the wall across the room and looked at it. She made her breathing slow and even. The first strike came across her shoulders. Sandra Simmons made a sound, small, sharp, involuntary, and her hand went to her mouth. Diana did not move, did not make a sound. She stayed with a spot on the wall and kept breathing because breathing was the only thing she needed to do right now. Marcus raised his hand again. Vanessa laughed. Open, full, real. The laugh of a woman who had been imagining this for months and found that the reality was even more satisfying than the fantasy. She raised her wine glass. Marcus smiled at her over Diana's shoulder. He raised his hand a third time. Every window in the living room lit up white. 4 black SUVs, parked along the street in front of the house. Not rushed, not dramatic, just there. Doors opening with a quiet coordination of people who had done this before and would do it again and were not concerned about any part of it. Ryan Harrison pushed back from the table and stood up. Derek Simmons turned to look out the window, and when so, still he stopped looking like himself and started looking like a version of himself that the situation had frozen in place. Carol Harrison grabbed her husband's arm without looking away from a window. Sandra Simmons looked at the window, then at Diana, then back at the window. Her expression was not afraid. It was the expression of a woman watching something she had been hoping would happen. Vanessa toned. The laugh stopped. The wine glass stopped moving. Stopped midair between the table and her lips. Her fingers tightened around the stem. Something moved through her face. Fast, complicated. Not anything close to the confidence she had carried into this house tonight. Marcus was still standing, belt still in his hand. He felt the room change before he understood why. The way temperature changes before you see the clouds. He turned around. The front door opened. 2 men came in first. Dark suits, earpieces. They stepped to each side of the doorway and stood there, not moving, not speaking, not doing anything except being present with complete, absolute certainty. The way load-bearing walls are present. Then 3 more came in behind them. Then the door opened further, and Owen walked in. He was not rushing. He did not fill the doorway with performance. He simply entered the room the way a man enters a situation he has already completely understood, with no wasted motion, no unnecessary energy, no space for anything except what was actually happening. He looked at the belt in Marcus's hand. He looked at his sister. He looked at Marcus. Just looked at him. And the room did something that rooms do not normally do. It held its breath. Ryan Harrison recognized him first. Something crossed his face, recognition landing like something heavy, and he took one small automatic step backward. The step of a man whose body has understood something before his mind has finished processing it. Derek Simmons recognized him 2 seconds later. He set his glass down on the table with the careful deliberateness of someone who wants to make very sure he has no object in his hand that could be misinterpreted. Carol Harrison did not know the name, but she had been in enough rooms in her life to recognize the difference between a man performing authority and a man who simply had it. She knew which one she was looking at. Sandra Simmons knew the name. She had read about Reeves' digital security in the Savannah Business Journal 14 months ago. She had read the article twice because it was that kind of article. She looked at Owen and then looked at Diana, and something shifted in her expression, understanding arriving, falling into place, making the whole picture suddenly clear. Vanessa Sharp knew the name. She had heard it once, 4 months ago, in passing. Marcus had mentioned Diana's brother, the way people mention things they have decided are not important. She has a brother, runs some computer company. Nobody you'd know. Vanessa was looking at him now. The wine glass came down. Slowly. Her hand was not steady. And Marcus's belt hit the floor. He had not let go of it on purpose. His hand had simply opened, without consulting him, without waiting for his permission. "You have no idea," Marcus said, barely a whisper, to himself, to nobody. "You have no idea who that is." He was right, but he was about to. Owen crossed the room. He stopped in front of Diana. He looked at her, not with pity, not with shock, not with any of the emotions that would have made this about him, with a complete, clear-eyed recognition of someone who has known another person their entire life and is not going to pretend they don't see exactly what has happened here. "Di," he said. One word. Her name. "Owen," she said. No performance. No tears. No explanation needed between them. Just two people who had grown up in the same house with the same parents standing together in a room where something terrible had just occurred, and one of them telling the other without words, "I am here. I see it. It is over now." Owen looked at Marcus. Marcus had not moved. He was standing in the center of his own living room with his belt on the floor and men in dark suits filling his doorway, and the dawning, complete, unavoidable understanding that the version of his life he had been running was finished. He tried to speak. His mouth opened. "Sit down," Owen said. 2 words. No raised voice. No threat visible in them. Just said, the way something is said by a person who expects to be heard and has never had reason to expect otherwise. Marcus sat down. Vanessa watched this happen. She watched the man who had spent 5 years making Diana Small sit down in his own chair because someone said 2 quiet words to him, and she felt, for the first time tonight, for possibly the first time in a very long time, genuinely afraid. Not of Owen, not of the man by the door. Afraid of what she had walked into. Afraid of what she had made herself part of. Afraid of the calculation she had been running for 8 months and how completely wrong it had turned out to be. "You," Owen said, not looking at Vanessa, just indicating her with a brief motion toward one of his men. "Make sure she stays." The man moved to stand near the living room entrance. Vanessa looked at him, then at Owen. Then she sat back down on the couch. Slowly, without saying anything, a car door outside, then footsteps on the front porch. Patricia Wells came through the front door. She was carrying a leather briefcase. She walked the way she had always walked, with a calm, unhurried certainty of a person who has the documents and therefore does not need to rush. She looked at the room once, took in every person, every detail, every dynamic. Then she walked to Diana and stood beside her, not touching, just present. Diana looked at her. "You came." "You called me this afternoon," Patricia said. "You said tonight was a night." "I didn't ask you to come." "No," Patricia said simply. "You didn't." She set her briefcase on the table and opened it. "I brought the documents." Marcus's eyes went to the briefcase. Something moved through his face. Calculation. Assessment. Trying to understand how much was in there and how much of it could still be managed. "What documents?" he said. Owen looked at him. "You'll understand shortly." Ryan Harrison was already standing. "We're going to go," he said. He looked at Carol. She was already picking up her jacket. He stopped at the door. He turned back. He looked at Diana, not at Marcus, not at Owen, at Diana, and his expression was not comfortable or smooth or socially managed. It was genuine. "I should have said something," he said, "earlier tonight, before it got to this. I'm sorry I didn't." Diana looked at him. "Thank you for saying so now." He and Carol left. Derek Simmons stood up. He looked at Marcus. Then he looked away from Marcus, the deliberate, final look away of a man who has made a decision about someone. He picked up his jacket and left without speaking. Sandra Simmons did not leave immediately. She walked to Diana. She stood in front of her for a moment. Then she said, quietly, so only Diana could hear, "You are not alone. You have never been as alone as he made you feel. Diana looked at her. Something tightened in her chest. Thank you. Sandra nodded once. Then she went to find her husband. The room was smaller now. Marcus, Vanessa, Diana, Owen, Patricia, and the men by the door. Owen pulled a chair from the table and sat across from Marcus. Let's talk, he said. Owen did not raise his voice once during what followed. He did not need to. How long? He said to Marcus. Not a question. A door. The kind of door that only opens one way. Marcus looked at his hands. I don't know what. How long have you been hurting my sister? The room held that sentence. Nobody moved. Marcus looked up. He searched Owen's face for the angle, for the leverage point, for the place where he could get purchase and start climbing back toward control. There was no place. Owen's face was not angry. It was simply decided, the expression of a man who has already determined where this ends and is simply waiting for the other person to arrive there. Things have been difficult, Marcus said, between us, for a while. I didn't ask about things, Owen said. I asked about you. Specifically, what you have done. How long? Silence. A few years, Marcus said. Diana did not close her eyes. She looked at the table. She looked at the good dishes she had put out tonight, the ones they registered for the wedding and used almost never. She looked at the cornbread she had made from her mother's recipe. A few years, 5 years. She had given 5 years to this house, to this man, to the smaller and smaller version of herself she had become trying to fit inside the life he had decided she deserved. A few years. She breathed. Patricia opened the briefcase. She placed a folder on the table. Then another. Then a third. 20 months of financial records, Patricia said. Her voice was a voice she used with clients in complex legal situations. Neutral, exact, carrying the quiet authority of complete preparation. $91,000 moved from joint marital accounts. Documentation of lease payments, vehicle payments, personal expenditures, all drawn from shared assets. Marcus looked at the folders. The calculation in his face intensified. How much did they have? How much could be explained away? Where was the opening? Page 9, Patricia said. Your signature. Account opening documents. Dated 19 months ago. Marcus went still. Page 16. Patricia turned a page without looking up. Transfer records. Dates, amounts, receiving accounts. All verified against bank documentation. She set the pen down. We have everything, Mr. Cole. The room was completely silent. And then, from the couch, Vanessa said, I'm not part of this. Owen looked at Vanessa for the first time since he had entered the room. Just looked at her, the way he looked at security vulnerabilities in client systems. Calmly, completely, with no emotion getting in the way of what he was actually seeing. What's your full legal name? He said. Vanessa frowned. The frown of someone performing confidence they no longer feel. Vanessa Sharp. Your full legal name, Owen said again. Exactly the same words. Exactly the same tone. Something moved through her face. Fast. Then covered over. That is my legal name. Owen looked at one of his men near the door. The man brought a tablet to the table. Owen placed it face up in front of Vanessa. Vanessa looked at the screen. And the composure, the practice, expensive, 8-month composure of a woman who had spent 8 months walking into another woman's house and treating it like her own, came apart. Not slowly, not with warning, all at once. Like a wall that has been under pressure for a long time, and finally finds the exact point where it cannot hold. On the screen was a document, a comprehensive background report, the kind Owen's company produced for high-security clients, thorough, verified, cross-reference across multiple databases. At the top, a name, not Vanessa Sharp, a different name, a real name, from a different state, from a different history. From the version of this woman she had spent 7 years trying to make disappear. Melissa Grant, Owen read aloud. Born in Columbia, South Carolina. Legally changed name 7 years ago. Previous employment history does not match the resume presented to current clients. Outstanding civil judgment in Richland County, $18,000, still unpaid. Vanessa, Melissa, pressed her lips together. Her jaw tightened. The lease on your Midtown apartment, Owen continued, was paid through funds traced to the account Marcus opened 19 months ago, drawn from marital assets, which makes it part of the financial discovery in the divorce proceedings. He closed the tablet. Your attorney will want to know that, he said simply. Vanessa looked at Marcus. Marcus was looking at the table. He did not look up. That was a moment, the specific, irrevocable moment, when Vanessa Sharp understood something she had been wrong about for 8 months. The man she had chosen, the man she had laughed with while his wife was on the floor, was not going to protect her, had never been planning to protect her, had been using her exactly the way he had been using Diana, as something convenient that served a purpose and would be discarded when the purpose was gone. She had miscalculated everything. She saw that now with complete, devastating clarity. Her hands were trembling. She put them in her lap so nobody would see. But Diana saw. Diana saw everything. A knock at the door. Owen's man opened it. Tyler Brooks stepped inside. He was 43. He had built the development firm alongside Marcus from the beginning. He had Marcus's trust, or had once, before the trust had curdled into something else over the past year. He looked at the room. He looked at Marcus. Something moved across his face. Not surprise. The expression of a man arriving at a conclusion he had been approaching for a long time. He set a folder on the table. I got the documents Thursday, he said. Not to Marcus. To Patricia. To Owen. To the room. I've been keeping my own notes for 14 months. Things that didn't add up in the firm's accounts. Vendor payments I couldn't trace. Client funds that moved in ways I couldn't explain. He opened his folder. I spoke to the firm's attorney yesterday. He is aware. The board meets Monday. Marcus looked at Tyler. His expression was something past shock, something past calculation, the expression of a man who has just understood that the last place he thought he still had ground has also given way. Tyler, he started. I'm sorry, Marcus, Tyler said, and he did look sorry. Genuinely. The sorrow of someone who has had to betray a person they once trusted because the person they once trusted turned out to be someone they did not know. I should have done this 6 months ago. I kept hoping I was wrong about what I was seeing. He looked at Diana. I was not wrong, he said. Diana looked at him. No, she said. You weren't. Tyler nodded once, slowly. Then he sat down, and the table was complete. I want him out of the house tonight, Diana said. Her voice was not shaking, was not angry, was not performing strength. It was just certain, the way things are certain after you have been honest with yourself about them for a very long time. Owen looked at Marcus. You heard her. Marcus opened his mouth. Owen looked at him. Marcus closed it. He went upstairs. 2 of Owen's men stood in the hallway while he packed a bag. Not threatening, just present, making sure the evening ended the way it needed to. At 10:45, the front door closed behind Marcus. Diana stood in the living room and listened to the sound of it. It was not a dramatic sound. It was just a door, but it was the right door. Finally, closing in the right direction. She sat down at the dining room table, her table, in her house, in her own life, and let out a breath that felt like it had been held for 5 years. Patricia put a cup of tea in front of her. Drink, she said. Diana picked it up. She held it with both hands. She felt the warmth move through her palms. Owen sat across from her. He did not fill the quiet with words. He just sat there the way he had always sat beside her, not trying to fix anything, not performing comfort, just being present in the specific way that only the people who love you without condition know how to be. After a while, Diana looked up. Is it over? She said. The first part, Owen said. The rest takes time, but it goes where it needs to go. She nodded. She looked at the good dishes on the table. The cornbread from her mother's recipe. The candles burned almost to nothing. She had done everything right. And this time, for the first time in 5 years, it had actually been enough. Vanessa Sharp left the house that night with her bag and the information that could not be unheard. Her real name was Melissa Grant. She had left Columbia, South Carolina 7 years ago after a series of decisions that had compounded into a situation she could not fix without starting entirely over. She had built Vanessa Sharp carefully, the name, the credentials, the social presence, the professional network. She was genuinely skilled at it. She had always been able to become whoever the room needed her to be. What she had not accounted for was Owen Reeves. Within 48 hours of that Friday night, the background report Owen's team had compiled was in the hands of 4 people. The director of the marketing firm that had hired Vanessa as a consultant, the property management company managing the Midtown lease, a professional licensing board that had been previously unaware that her credentials had been misrepresented, and a business journalist at the Savannah Morning News who had been following a story about professional fraud in the local development industry for 9 months. The journalist called Vanessa on a Monday. She did not answer. On Tuesday, she called back with a lawyer she had found that morning. It did not change anything. The story ran Thursday. Business section. 3 columns. Her real name. Her fabricated professional history. The civil judgment in Columbia. The misrepresented credentials. By Friday, her consulting contracts were terminated. The Midtown lease, tied to Marcus's now frozen accounts, was served with eviction notice. 3 professional associations quietly and formally removed her from their membership directories. She left Savannah within 3 weeks. Diana heard this from Patricia, who heard it through a contact at the property management firm. Diana wrote it in her notebook. 1 line. Factual. Without satisfaction. Without ceremony. Then she turned the page. Some things are worth recording, then worth moving past. The board meeting at the development firm happened on Monday as Tyler had said it would. Patricia attended as Diana's legal representative. Tyler presented 14 months of documented financial irregularities. The firm's own attorney confirmed that an internal audit had been initiated. Marcus's access to firm accounts was suspended pending review. His access to client files was revoked. He was placed on indefinite administrative leave by Wednesday. The financial discovery in the divorce proceedings expanded to include the firm irregularities, because some of the funds Tyler had flagged had moved through the same account structures that Diana's documents had already traced. The 2 investigations overlapped and confirmed each other. Marcus's attorney filed 2 motions to limit discovery. Both were denied by Judge Robert Harmon, a 64-year-old family court judge who had been on the bench for 22 years and who read Patricia's documentation with the focused attention of someone who respected good paperwork and was not moved by attempts to obscure it. The documentation is thorough, Judge Harmon said during the second hearing. The motion is denied. Discovery will proceed as requested. Marcus sat beside his attorney at that hearing and said nothing. He had stopped looking for the angle 2 weeks earlier. There was no angle. There was only the documentation. The $91,000 documented across 20 months. The firm irregularities Tyler had spent 14 months quietly recording. The background report on Vanessa, on Melissa Grant, that connected her false identity to financial structures Marcus had helped build and maintain. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. The terms were not the terms Marcus would have written. Diana kept the house. She kept the joint accounts up to the date of separation, documented and verified. She received a structured settlement that Patricia had built on the foundation of everything that had been recorded, cross-referenced, and confirmed. The civil proceedings from the firm irregularities continued separately. Marcus's attorney negotiated a settlement. The terms included repayment of misappropriated funds and the permanent forfeiture of Marcus's equity stake in the firm. He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a suburb 30 miles from Savannah. He did not attend the divorce finalization in person. He sent his attorney. The chair on his side of the courtroom was empty. Diana sat beside Patricia and answered the questions she was asked and did not look at the empty chair. She did not need to. The chair being empty told her everything she needed to know about the person she had married. The house in Savannah was hers. Diana walked through it the evening after the finalization. Every room. She touched the doorframe of the kitchen. She stood in the backyard for 10 minutes. She looked at the garden she had planted and tended through 5 years of a marriage that had tried to convince her she was less than she was. The garden was still there. The tomatoes were in. The herbs along the south fence. The flowers she had planted because she liked them, which was the only reason she had ever needed. She went inside. She made coffee. She sat at her kitchen table, in her house, in her own life, and was quiet for a long time. Not sad, not relieved, just settled. The specific, whole-body feeling of something being exactly where it is supposed to be after a long time of being wrong. Her phone buzzed. "Owen, How are you? She thought about the honest answer. I'm good, she typed back. Actually good. 3 dots. Then, I know. I can tell. She set the phone down. She opened her notebook, the black spiral-bound notebook she had bought 18 months ago and filled with dates and times and observations and patterns and everything she had seen when everyone assumed she wasn't watching. She turned to the last page. She wrote 2 words. It held. Then she closed the notebook. She put it in the bottom drawer of the desk in her office. She did not throw it away. She never threw away records. That was a habit built over years that had turned out to matter. But she did not need it anymore. The record had done what records do when they are built carefully and completely. It had spoken, clearly, precisely, without raising its voice. And everything that needed to hear it had heard it. Savannah, Georgia, on a Saturday morning in May. Diana Bennett, she had taken her name back on the first day she legally could, was sitting on the back porch with coffee. The garden was full. She had expanded it over the winter, added a raised bed along the west fence, planted peppers, planted squash, added 2 rose bushes near the back gate that had started blooming 2 weeks ago in a shade of deep pink that she had not expected and loved immediately. Bennett Contract Consulting had been operating for 3 months. Her own firm, just her and 1 part-time associate named Claire, 26 years old, organized, attentive, the kind of person who took notes without being asked and remembered what she had written. 3 clients. A mid-sized development firm in Savannah, a family law practice in Brunswick that needed contract review support, a non-profit in Hilton Head that had discovered irregularities in their vendor agreements and needed someone who knew how to find them. She had found things in all 3 within the first 2 weeks. Things hidden carefully. Things that looked fine when you looked at them quickly and revealed themselves only when you looked at the pattern. When you read the whole document instead of the summary. When you wrote things down and compared them to what you had written the month before. Patricia Wells had joined as senior advisor in month 2. She brought 30 years of experience and 4 professional relationships that had already opened doors Diana would have spent years finding on her own. On the 3rd Friday of every month, they had lunch at a restaurant on River Street and argued about contract methodology and ordered the bread pudding and laughed about things that had nothing to do with work. Diana had not had a friendship like this before. She understood now that Marcus had made real friendship complicated, not by forbidding it, but by making it feel like too much effort, like something she should want less of, like something that took attention away from what actually mattered. She was making up for that now. Sandra Simmons had called 2 months after the dinner. They had coffee once. Then again. Then they were in the habit of it. Easy, undemanding. The kind of friendship that doesn't need to explain itself. Sandra had been the person who said, "You are not alone," quietly in the middle of the worst night, and Diana had not forgotten it. She did not forget things. Her phone buzzed. "Owen, coming to Savannah next weekend. Bringing groceries. Don't argue." She smiled. Type back, "I have groceries." His response came in 3 seconds. "You have contract files and coffee. That's not the same." She laughed, set the phone on the porch railing, picked up her coffee. She looked at the garden, at the roses blooming in the color she had not expected, at the tomatoes coming in red and heavy, at the flowers she had planted for no practical reason except that she liked them and had decided that was enough. She had planted all of this during a marriage that had tried to convince her that what she built with her own hands was not worth keeping. She had kept it anyway. She was still here, still paying attention, still writing things down, still completely, fully, entirely herself. The gate at the side of the yard opened. Owen came through it with 2 grocery bags and no advance notice because that was exactly how Owen operated when it came to showing up for his sister. "You said next weekend," Diana said. "Plans change," he said. He set the bags on the porch table and sat down in the other chair. He poured himself some of her coffee. She let him. She had always let him. They sat in the morning light and looked at the garden and did not say anything for a while.